So now we are moving on to loops in Java. And looping in programming languages is a feature which facilitates the execution of a set of instructions or functions repeatedly until certain conditions evaluate to be true. And there are different ways of doing loops in Java, but we're going to look at the while loop, the do loop, and the for loop. There is also the for each loop, but we're not going to look at that today. We'll just look at the three basic ones, which are the while, do loop, and the for loop. So the first one we're going to look at is the while loop. And we're also going to do some examples regarding them as well, regarding each one of them, to have a better understanding of how it is all used. So for the while loop is a control flow statement that allows code to be executed repeatedly based on a given Boolean conditions. And the conditions within the while loop must always be Boolean. They must always have a Boolean result, which is true or false. So the syntax for the while loop is while, Boolean condition, which is either true or false, and then a curly bracket with the code that must be executed. So if the condition is true, the code within the curly brackets will be executed, and if it is false, it is basically going to be skipped. So I'm going to explain using this block of code as well. So the while loop starts with checking of a condition, and if it is executed to be true, then the loop body statement, we're going to have some looping statements as well. Some looping body statements are executed. And then once that is executed, once the condition is true and the loop in the body is executed, then the statement, which is this one, is executed, and it continues until the condition is false. And once it is false, then the looping stops. So looping goes in repeatedly as far as this condition continues to be true. And once the condition is false, it just exits the loop, and then the program ends or it stops. So I'm going to look at an example to see how that is executed in Java. So while loop. So while loop example, just going to copy this one. And I'm going to declare int counter, giving my counter the value of 0. And this is where my while loop is going to be declared. While this counter, which is a condition, is less than 15, I want this certain code to be executed. So as far as the counter is less than 15, keep executing this set of codes. Keep executing. I love Java. And outside of this while loop, I'm going to explain what this is doing now. And my semicolon at the end. So I've declared and initialized a variable called counter and assigned in the value of 0. And this is what I want my while loop to do. This Boolean condition, I want the counter, as far as the counter is less than 15, keep executing I love Java. So our initial value of counter is 0. So we're going to go into the while loop now. While 0 is less than 15, 0 is less than 15, true or false? True. Execute I love Java. It's going to be printed out. Then we looked at pre-increment and post-increment last week. So they are also useful while you are using, while you are going to be deciding, while you're going to be using conditional statements or loops in Java. Increment and post-decrement are also essential. So as far as my counter is less than 0, is less than 15, print I love Java and then increase the counter to 1. So initially my counter is 0, 0 less than 15, true. Print I love Java, printed out. Then increase the counter to 1. 0 plus 1, 1. 1 less than 15, true. I love Java. Counter plus 1. 1 plus 1, 2. Then it's going to go on like that up to 13. 13 less than 15, true. Print I love Java. I love Java. Counter plus 1. 13 plus 1, 14. 14 less than 15, true. I love Java. 14 plus 1, 15. 15 less than 15, false. Then that is where the loop is going to end or break. Then afterwards, when the loop ends, then it's going to print out of loop, out of while loop. So we're going to see that running now. Let me run this code. And you would see it's going to print out, it's meant to print out I love Java 15 times from 0 to 14. I love Java, I love Java, I love Java. Then after the 14th one, out of while loop. Actually, I'm going to try to print out the counters as well. Counter, pardon me. Okay, let's give this a try. Exactly. So this is printing out the counter. So you see how many of the I love Javas are printed out and where the counter also stops. So the counter stops at 14. So as far as the counter is less than 15, it's going to keep printing out what you want it to print. And the number is going to be increased. And when the counter is 15, 15 less than 15, false, then that is where the loop is going to stop of end, and then it's going to print out of while loop. So this is how while loop is done. And we are going to have another example as well, but this is going to be a bit shorter, and it's basically also doing the same thing, but just to have like a second example of how this is done. I'm just going to copy this one. And while loop 2, good. Just going to cancel this and this one, perfect. So for this one, I'm just going to have a variable called x and assign it to the value of 1 and change my conditions as well. Value of x and I want x to be increased and this one to be reduced 4. Good. So what is the while loop going to do? Check the condition, execute what I want to execute, and if I need to do an increment, again, then use the new value in the condition and continue until the condition turns out to be false. So in here we have 1. 1 is less than or equal to 4. True. Then the value of x is printed out. Then 1 is increased. 1 plus 1, 2. Then now we have to check the condition again. 2 less than or equal to 4, true. Then the new value of x is printed out. Then x is increased again. 2 plus 1, 3. 3 is checked again with the condition. 3 less than or equal to 4, true. Then the new value of x is printed out, which is 3. Then 3 is increased. 3 plus 1, 4. Then we have 4 here. Then the new value of 4 is used in the condition. 4 less than or equal to 4, true. Then the new value of 4 is printed out. New value of x, pardon me. X is printed out, which is 4. Then 4 is increased again. 4 plus 1, 5. Then we use it in the condition. 5 less than or equal to 4, true or false? False. Then that is where the while loop ends or stops or breaks. Then it's going to print out of while loop. So we're expecting the value of x is equal to 1, value of x 2, value of x 3, and value of x 4. So let's give that a try now. Perfect. So we have value of x 1, 2, 3, 4, and also printing out of while loop, which is obviously outside the while loop. So this is how while loop is executed. Now we're going to look at the next type of loop, which is the do while loop. And this is also similar to the while loop. And the do while loop is always executed at least once. And the difference between the do while loop and the while loop is that for the while loop, the condition is checked first. But for the do while loop, the condition is checked after the block of code is executed. And this is how the syntax is. If you look at the syntax for the while loop, we have the while, then the condition we want to check. As far as the condition is true, the code is executed. But for the do while, the condition is first, the statement or the code is first executed, then the condition is then checked. So that is just the difference between the while and the do while loop. So we're going to do an example now just to have an understanding of how the do while loop is carried out. So moving on to our IDE. Do while loop, and I'm gonna copy and in this do while, int counter equals 0, do, that means execute this, when you execute it, increase the counter, and then check the condition. As far as the counter is less than 15, and afterwards, this is outside the do while loop, print out outside the loop. Perfect. So what are we doing here? We've got an initialization and declaration of a variable called counter, assign the value of 0, and then I want you to first execute all of this, the statements, then check the condition. Then as far as the condition is still true, it's going to keep going, execute, increase the counter, check the condition, execute, increase the counter, check the condition. But once the condition turns out to be false, then the loop is terminated and that marks the end of its life cycle. So let's do this manually before we run the code. So first of all, it's going to print out 0, I love Java. That's 0, 1. That's 0, first of all. Then it's going to increase it. 0 plus 1 is 1. Then check the condition. Our new counter value is 1. 1 is less than 15. True. Then it goes again. 1, I love Java. Our new value of counter is 1. 1 plus 1, 2. Then it goes into the while loop to check the condition. 2 is less than 15. True. Then it keeps going. Then when it gets to 14, so it's gone 13, I love Java. 13 plus 1, 14. Goes into the condition. 14 less than 15, true or false? True. Then it goes again. 14, I love Java. 14 plus 1, 15. Then it goes into the condition. 15, I love Java. True or false? Sorry, 15 less than 15, which is false. Then it terminates the loop there, and then it prints out outside the loop. So this is going to print out 0, I love Java, up to 14, I love Java, and then outside the loop. So let's give that a try. I think that has been done. I'm going to run that again just to double check. Yes, 0 to 14, I love Java, then it printed out outside the loop. So this is how do while loop is executed. So the while loop checks the condition, then executes the statement. But for the do while, it executes the statement before checking the condition. So that is how you differentiate between the while and the do while loop. So moving on to the next type of loop that we are looking at today, we are looking at the for loop. And the for loop is quite different from the while or the do while loop. The for loop is considered to be a concise way of writing loop structures because, as you can see, unlike the while loop, the for loop takes an initialization, a condition, and then the increment and decrement on one single line. But you can see that for the while and the do while loop, we have to do them on separate lines, but for the while loop, you can do them on a single line. And this is how the while loop is, this is how the syntax of the while loop is. For the for loop, pardon me. So this is how the syntax for the for loop is. We have for, then the initialization, condition we want to check, and the increment or decrement we want to perform. And then once all of this is true, then we execute the statements. So looking at the diagram here, the flow diagram, we have the initialization of a variable, and that maps the start of the loop. Then we have the condition checking, which is used to test whether the condition is still valid, and then it must return a Boolean value, true or false. Then once the condition is executed to be true, then the statement in the loop body is executed. And then once that is executed, then the variable is either incremented or decremented, and then it is used for the next iteration in the loop. And then the condition or the loop is going to be terminated when the condition turns out to be false, and that marks the end of the life cycle of the code. So we are also, after the for loop, we also have something called the infinite loop. And this is how the syntax is. And what do we know about the infinite loop? The infinite loop, there are some times that developers or even programmers write an infinite loop, and the infinite loop is going to keep running and running, and it doesn't end on its own because it is infinite, so it's going to run forever unless you stop the code manually. But I wouldn't always suggest having infinite loop within your programs because it's just not ideal. The program just keeps running and running, and then you have to stop it manually, or you want your program to stop on its own after certain conditions have been met. So we're going to look at the for loop statement to see how that is executed. So we're going to move on to our IDE now. For loop. So for the for loop, I'm just going to copy this. For loop. And the syntax for the for loop, I'm just going to put it up here. Perfect. So the syntax is for, and we have our initialization. So initialization is, an example of initialization is this. This is initialization and declaration. So we have our initialization here, we have our condition here, and we have our increment here. So it's all splitted in different lines in the do and while loop. But for the for loop, we have them on a single line. So we have initialization, and this is the format that it goes in. Then we have condition, and then we have increment or decrement based on what you want to do. Decrement, yep. And then we have our curly brackets, which is going to take up the statements we want to execute. So now let's write a for loop on this next line. So for is the keyword. Then we start with initialization. So int I equals to 1. Then we use the semicolon. Yeah, we use the semicolon. Then what do we want our condition to be? I is less than or equal to 15. Semicolon again, and then do we want to increment or decrement? We want to increment. And what do we want? What statement do we want to be executed? Print. Good. So how is this going to work? So we first look at the initialization. Our I is 1. We're going to assign the value of 1. So that's I equals to 1. Good. Then we'll move into the condition. I is less than or equal to 15. True or false? True. Then it goes on, after the condition, then it goes on to execute the statement 1, I love Java. Then after then it increments the I again. That's I plus 1. That's 1 plus 1, 2. Then after the new value of I, which is 2, then it goes back into the condition. 2 is less than or equal to 15. True or false? True. Then it executes this line of code again. 2, I love Java. Then the new value of I is 2. Then it increases it to 3. Then it goes again into the condition. Then it executes. Then when it gets to 14, so it goes from 13 less than or equal to 15, true. 13, I love Java. Then it increases the value to 14. 13 plus 1, 14. Then it goes back into the condition. 14 less than or equal to 15, true or false? True. Then it goes again to print out the statement. 14, I love Java. Then it increases 14. 14 plus 1, 15. Then it goes again into the condition. 15 less than or equal to 15. True or false? True. Then it prints out this statement again. 15, I love Java. Then it increases the value of I again by 1. 15 plus 1, 16. 16 less than or equal to 15, false. Then that is where the condition, the for loop is terminated or executed. Then we are going to have 1 to 15, I love Java, if we are going to print that out now. So let's give that a try. Perfect. So it printed out. I'm going to move this one up. So this printed out I love Java 15 times. So we can, so if we want to initialize two different variables, we can also do that in for loop as well. So we can basically just put a comma here. That was a mistake. We put a comma after the one to declare and initialize another variable. So I want to initialize a variable called j and assign it the value of 1 as well. But for the condition, it is not going to accept a comma. You can see that I brought out red lines. So we want our conditions to be executed together. So this is where we are going to use the logical AND operator, which is the double ampersand sign. And my first condition is I want I to be less than or equals to 15. And I want the j to be less than 10. And after that is done, do I want to increment or decrement j? I want to increment j as well. And I'm going to make some changes to the print statement also. So can we guess how many lines are going to be printed out for this particular line of code? We've got a value of I1, J1, and these conditions must be executed together. That means I want the two of them must come out to be true for this condition to be true. So that means my I must be less than or equal to 15, and my J must also be less than 10. So how many lines of code are going to be printed out? I'm just going to take a look at the comments. Someone is saying 10. Anyone else wants to guess? So everyone is saying 10. Well, unfortunately, no. Yeah, Femi got it right. Femi said 9. So there are 9 lines of code that will be printed out. And that is because our condition is I less than or equal to 15 and j less than 10. So if I'm going to move forward. So assuming my I is 8 and my j is 8, for instance, then I'm going to have 8 less than or equal to 15, true or false, true, and 8 less than 10, true. And it's going to print out 8, I love Java 8. And the value of I, which is 8, is increased to 9. And the value of j, which is also 8, is increased to 9. Then we are going to move back into the condition to validate them. So we have 9 is less than or equal to 15, true or false, true. And j, 9 less than 10, true or false, true. That means those conditions are true together. They must always come out to be true. When we are using ampersand sign, both sides must be true. So that's going to be 9, I love Java 9. Then we increase the values again. That is 10 and 10 for the new values of I and j. Then I is now 10. 10 less than or equal to 15, true. And j is 10 less than 10. That is going to come out as false. So this condition is true, false, and all of this condition is coming out as false. So we are going to stop at 9, I love Java. So we are going to have 9 lines of code printed out. So so we just have to watch out for what your condition is. Exactly 9 lines of code printed out. So if I want to implement the infinite loop that I told you about, so this is just how the infinite loop syntax is. And I want to print out system.out.print. It's not always ideal to use infinite loop, but I just want to see how it looks like. and I'm just going to change this to no, and I'll try commenting this one out. So if I run this now, this is just going to keep running yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no forever. You can see if you look at my cursor, if I'm to scroll down, it's just running yes, no. You can see it moving by itself. Yes, no, until I stop this program. So that is why infinite loop is not always advisable, but I just wanted you to see how it is implemented. So that is all done with all the loops. Now we're going to go back to our break statement that I mentioned earlier. The break is used to terminate a loop, and it is used in a switch statement to exit the loop as well. So I'm going to look at an example of how the break statement is used. And I was going to use a for loop. So that was why I wanted us to look at for loops first before looking at the examples involving for loop with break statements. So I'm going to do an initialization int I equals to 1. And my condition I less than or equal to 10. And my increment I plus plus. And my curly brackets. If I is the same as 5, break. And I want you to print out I for me, the values of I. So I want us to guess what this is going to print out. If I, we have the value of 1 assigned to I. So I less than or equal to 10, true or false, true. Then it's going to go into the if statement. If I, which is 1, is the same as 10, then end the statement for me. But since I is just 1, I is not the same as 5, so it's going to come out as false. Then it's going to print out the value of I out, which is 1. Then I is then going to be incremented to 2. The new value of I is 2. 2 less than 10, true or false? True. 2 less than or equal to 10, true or false? True. And it's going to go into the if statement, which we have the value of I to be 2. 2 is the same as 5, true or false? False. Then it's going to print out the value of I for me, which is 2. Then let's move it forward to 4. So the new value of I is 4, and 4 has been printed out here. Then we have 4 plus 1, 5. 5 is less than or equal to 10. True or false? True. Then we come into this if statement. If 5 is the same as 5? 5 equals 5. True. Then this is where the statement is going to be ended. So it's just going to break here. It's going to terminate the loop that we are currently looping into. So let us print out this statement to see what values are going to be printed out. We are expecting 1, 2, 3, and 4 because it terminated at I equals to 5, and that wasn't printed out at all. It just ended it. It terminated it for us there. So the values we're expecting is 1, 2, 3, 4, and the one outside the for loop as well, which is out of for loop. So this is how break statement is used in Java. So I'm going to look at the final statement, which is continue, and this is used to make the program jump to the next iteration of loop, and it can be used with loop structures, every type of loop structures. So we basically just have continue as a syntax, so it can be used in any loop structure. So we're going to look at one example before we move to the question and answer section. So we have continue state statements. So for the continue statement, I would also use the previous example, which is for the break. So instead of the break, I'll just have continue. And continue, so how is this one used? We've already said that continue, it makes the program to jump to the next iteration of the loop. So how is continue used? So we have 1 assigned to the value of I, then it goes into the condition 1 is less than or equal to 10, true or false, true. Then it comes into the if statement, 1 is the same as 5, true or false, false. Then it skips the continue, then it prints out the value of I false, which is 1. Then it goes to the increment 1 plus 1, the new value of I is 2. So let's move it forward to I equals to 4. So I has been printed out here to be 4. Then we increase the value of I. 4 plus 1, 5. Then we go into the condition 5 is less than or equal to 10, true or false, true. Then in here 5 is the same as 5. Yeah, 5 is the same as 5, true or false, true. Then it goes into this continue. So what this continue does is that it skips whatever is meant to be done for that value, and then it goes straight to this increment part. So it doesn't print out the value of 5, it just skips it, that is, it jumps it, and it moves to the next iteration, which is going straight to the increment. That is 5 plus 1, 6. Then it goes into the condition 6 less than or equal to 10, true or false, true. Then it goes into the if. Is 6 the same as 5, false. Then it prints out the value of I, which is 6. Then it goes again 7, 8, 9. Then when the value of I is 9, then it goes into the condition again. Actually, before it goes into the condition, the value of I is 9. Then it increases the value to 10. 9 plus 1, 10. Then it comes to the condition 10 less than or equal to 10, true or false, true. Then it goes into the if statement. Is 10 the same as 5, false. Then it prints out the value of I, which is 10. So we are expecting 9 lines to be printed out, and 5 should be omitted. The number 5 should be omitted because we have this continue here, and the 5 also brings this if statement to be true. So that is why the continue is executed, and it skips whatever is meant to be done for the value of 5. Then it moves to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So let's run this line of code now to see what the value is going to be. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the continue basically jumps or skips the iteration for whatever validates it, and then it moves to the next one. So that is what continue does. So that is the end of our conditional statements and loops in Java class for today. So we have about 10 minutes left to spare. So if you have any questions, you can just put them in the comment section now, and I would answer them. Do you have any questions? Okay, recap on nested and laddered if statements. So laddered if statements, I'm going to change this value to 20. So laddered if is used to test multiple conditions. So we have a value of I to be 20 here, for instance. So it's going to go through all of the conditions because if always has a condition attached to it. And once the condition turns out to be true, it executes the block of code associated with it. But if it is false, then it goes on to check the next set of conditions. So the value here is 20 for I. 20 is the same as 10, false. It skips this one, move to the next condition to check. 20 is the same as 15, false. Skips, check the next condition. 20 is the same as 20, true. Then it executes this one and skips the rest. But assuming we have 100, so it goes again. 100 is the same as 10, false. Goes to the next condition. 100 is the same as 15, false. Goes into the next condition. 100 is the same as 20, false. So that is why we have an if at the end of our if else, which is always executed when none of the conditions turn out to be true. So this is going to print out the else part, which is I is not present. And if we look at the nested if, so I'm just going to comment this one out. The nested if else, this is basically an if else inside another if else statement. And the inside if else statement is only executed if the outer if else turns out to be true. So assuming I have another else here, I'm just making this quick so I can answer other people's questions. And I'm saying I is I is I'm just using that as an example. So this is basically going to go 10, which is I. 10 is the same as 10, true. So once that turns out to be true, it goes into the if else inside of it to execute it. So this is going to be 10 less than 12, true. Then it executes this. And then the program stops. But assuming this one turns out to be false, for instance, pardon me. So assuming I put 15 in here, so I'm saying 10 is the same as 15, false. So this is going to be ignored and it just goes into the else part to execute it. So if we are to run this one now, run, then it basically prints out I is not present. So the inner if else is only executed if the outer if else condition is true. So that's just how you differentiate between nested and ladder if else. And how do you know what? Can you please explain how to decide what type of loop to use? And how do you know what condition statement to use? So it just depends on what you want your program to execute. So if you want to compare, I'll use the switch for example. The switch and the if else are basically the same. So it just depends on what you want your program to use. It depends on what you want your program to use. That will depend on the type of loop or conditional statement you will use. There's no basic guideline. It's just basically your initiative. Like you don't want to have multiple while loops or multiple lines of while loops. You know, you have to do like initialization on a different line and increment on a different line. You can simply use a for loop for that, which adds all of them on the same line, and that makes your code neater and then also makes it reusable as well. So it depends on what you want, on what task you want to carry out. That will depend on the type of loop or conditional statement you would use. Apologies, I'll reduce the way I speak in the next class. Sorry about that, but that's just how I speak, but I'll try to reduce in next class. And then, how do you create classes in a class? I'm not sure what you mean by that, but if I'm to create a Java class, I'll basically click on the SRC folder, right click on it, click on Java, and then I'm going to give it a name. This is all in the first video, so if you take a look at it, you would find it in there. And what I'm basically copying inside is the public static void method. And copy, paste, and that is me ready to start coding. It's basically the same as Windows as well. And I guess if we don't have any more questions, then that is all done for today's class. Yes, it's true. Do while loop is rarely used in programming, and that is true. People mostly use for loop, or we have a while loop and a for loop inside. And then I know people mostly use while loop and for loop as well. They rarely use do while loop. So yes, you're correct. Wale, your question, string arg is not the same as what you typed in the comment section, so they are actually different. And your string has to start with an S. Some people make a mistake of starting the string with a small letter, and it is going to show you that there is an error there. So you have to change it to capital letter as well. And for your system.printout, it starts with a small letter as well. It starts with a capital letter, not a small letter. So you would obviously know that if you use a small letter, it shows you that there is an error there, so you have to fix it. I always recommend that you, I know some people always want to practicalize what I'm doing while they are also on their own system, but most of the time I also always recommend to actually understand what I'm teaching, then maybe later on you can then do your own practical aspects yourself, or when you're also doing some examples personally during your own time also. But the video is going to be posted on the YouTube channel, so you can subscribe to the channel and you get notifications when the video is posted, and that should be within the next 24 to 48 hours. So yeah, if there is no more question, then that is all done for today's class.